Well, I don't have a real formal bio, but here's what I have. He's a Columbia person. He's a graduate of Hickman High School in Mizzou, very important. But after graduation, he went to St. Louis and he worked in the retirement area, helping organizations large and small. He retired early, and he's still helping out some organizations as a voice professional, things like website narration. Maybe the Dems could use you a little. We might have to talk to you, John. We need
Happy
those
to.
kinds of skills. That's after we win in August and November. He's been volunteering for Respect Missouri voters for just over a year, and he really believes in the power of the people. Thank you again for being here. We look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thanks very much. Appreciate the introduction. Yeah. Like I said, like Alice said, I was born and raised in Columbia, and in 1986, which is 40 years ago, I graduated from Mizzou and have been in the St. Louis area ever since. Um, so anyway, all right, let me share my screen here. All right, hopefully you all see that, a big QR code in the upper right and all that good stuff. All right,
Yep,
perfect.
that
All
looks
right.
good, John.
Okay. And I'll preface my whole discussion here by saying I get the sense that there is definitely some familiarity in this audience with both Respect Mo voters and the Amendment 4 situation, but hopefully I'll fill in a few cracks that you might have in your knowledge base. And again, at the end, I'll try to answer questions. And in all honesty, if there's a question I can't answer very well, I will endeavor to get an answer and get back to your organization, in the coming days. So Respect Missouri Voters, as you may know, we're a volunteer-led, very much a grassroots campaign, and our mission is to ensure that the voters remain as a check and balance on government, and we stop politicians from taking away voter power. And we are made up of everyday Missourians like you and me, and we're not affiliated with any political party per se. So today we're going to talk about the initiative petition process in Missouri first, what exactly it is, how it works, and how it's been under attack by our representatives, and what Respect Mo Voters is doing to try to preserve and strengthen this century-old freedom. All right. So, if you've ever voted in Missouri, I'm sure all of you have, you've seen questions like these on your ballot, right? Like a Proposition A or Constitutional Amendment 1. And Missourians do get to decide yes or no when we do go to vote. And so, some common terms people use to refer to these particular types, right? Some people use these terms kind of interchangeably. Citizen initiative. Some people would call it ballot initiative or ballot measure. The legal term for this process is initiative petition. So if you ever hear anybody say the IP process, that's most likely what they're referring to. So how do initiative petition processes get on the ballot? Well, let me rephrase that. There are two ways things get on the ballot. The legislature actually puts the vast majority of them there, but a few are put there by citizens working together toward a common goal. So when politicians either ignore what voters and our families want or just don't like things the citizens seem to be in favor of, these citizen-led petitions do let Missourians act as a check on the government. As you may know, partisan politicians do write the summaries that you see on your ballot, whether the legislature put it on the ballot or the citizen initiative put it on the ballot. We'll talk more about those summaries here in a minute. So now let's dive into how the citizen initiative petition qualifies for your ballot and then passes. So there's three basic steps involved here on that citizen road to the ballot. First, you have to write the law or the amendment. Then you have to collect enough valid signatures to get it on the ballot. And then you have to convince voters to vote yes. Now, unfortunately, you'll see there at the bottom of the screen, SOS stands for the Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State, who is sometimes very partisan, writes the ballot summary. So, to stop an initiative petition that is popular from passing, politicians can use deceptive ballot language to sway our votes. Now, historically, a lawsuit could lead the courts to rewrite the ballot language to be fair, accurate, and unbiased. You might remember in 2025, the legislature passed Senate Bill 22, which made the process of challenging ballot language in court very lengthy, much more difficult. This year, the Missouri State Supreme Court actually struck this down on a procedural technicality. And, as you might expect, our politicians immediately started work to replace it. We can't expect politicians to stop trying to make the process more difficult and confusing for voters. That's the unfortunate truth. So the citizen initiative, getting it on the ballot in Missouri, is already one of the most strenuous grassroots undertaking in the entire country. This is actually not part of our script. You may or may not know about 25 states have some form of citizen initiative that allows citizens to get something on the ballot, so it's not all driven by their state legislators. Now, in Missouri, we have to get over 170,000 highly verified unique signatures from registered Missouri voters. Now, there are strict distribution targets across at least 6 of Missouri's 8 congressional districts. Now, the map you see in the lower corner of your screen was the map that was in place until a month or two ago. And of course, that's all kind of a muddle right now. I don't really want to get into that. But we have to get signatures, a certain number of signatures from at least 6 of Missouri's 8 congressional districts. Now, the number of signatures that we have to get depends on whether we're putting forward a change in a law or a statute or an amendment. If it's an amendment, we have to get 8% of the signatures cast in the last vote for governor, which of course was November of 24. If it's just a law or a statute, the restriction is not as high. You have to get 5%. Again, it has to be in at least 6 of those congressional districts. Now, again, this path, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal, logistic, and organizing costs are required, and thousands, and I mean thousands of hours of volunteer labor from hundreds or even thousands of volunteers. And I can tell you, Respect Mo voters, last I checked, we have well over 2,000 volunteers around the state. So because of these really high hurdles, a lot of citizen petitions that are filed, they have to be filed with the state before you do anything. They never even make it to the ballot because it's difficult to even just get it on the ballot. The few that do survive do represent issues with massive public support from all across the state. And the initiative petition process is just the first step, right? Getting it on the ballot. It obviously doesn't enact the law. So once we gather enough signatures, verified signatures to qualify, then the proposal goes to a statewide public vote. Of course, the ultimate power remains with the voters on election day, so voters do have the final say. Now, as we've seen, getting an initiative petition isn't easy, and politicians still don't want voters to have the power to be a check on their control and to hold them accountable. So they have a big bag of tricks that they use to attack the will of the people. So let's look at this deceiving that you see on the left. So what do we mean by that? Well, partisan politicians will intentionally try to confuse voters with misleading ballot summaries and what's called ballot candy. You may be familiar with that term. Remember, politicians write the summaries that we see on our ballots, and many voters base their decision to vote yes or no strictly on that summary. Now, ballot candy is a common tactic used to sweeten the deal for legislative measures that are actually unpopular. So one of those bullet points that voters might see on the ballot will be something popular that oftentimes is already in law, but they're hiding the true consequence and enticing Missourians to vote yes. Now, for citizen-led initiative petitions that are popular, we often see confusing technical jargon or a misrepresentation of what a measure would actually accomplish. So that's the deception part. Now let's look at overturning. The state legislature can overturn laws passed by the people with a simple majority vote in Jefferson City without any further input from the voters. Again, we see this happen with some frequency. They can also send amendments that are passed by the people back to the ballot with a simple majority in the legislature. This is what will be happening in November with Amendment 3 being put back on the ballot, the Reproductive Rights Amendment. As you all remember, Missourians voted for that in November of 24. The legislature says, oh, we don't like that they voted for that. The people might have been confused by the language, whatever. So they're able to put that back on the ballot again this coming November. And so they'll use deceptive ballot summaries to trick voters into overturning something that they just approved. And finally, the last trick is attacking. Passing laws to weaken citizen initiative. So you might be asking yourself, wouldn't it be easier just to put an end to this process entirely? Well, politicians have been, both parties, in all honesty, have been attempting to kill our power to use the initiative petition for decades, and they're getting dangerously close to succeeding. So one of the things when we go around the state, we do try to emphasize to folks that this is really not a partisan issue. Some of you might recall in the 1980s, the Democrats controlled the legislature in Missouri, and voters did pass the Hancock Amendment to limit taxes. So after the Hancock Amendment passed, the Democrat-led General Assembly tried to restrict citizen initiatives. And at the time, Republican Governor John Ashcroft vetoed that legislative bill, defending ballot initiatives as a crucial voter freedom. And you can read the quote that he has there. I think it sums it up pretty well, to be honest. And he criticized politicians who attempted to take away voter power. Now, this is happening again today under the current supermajority that we have in Missouri. So when politicians backed by special interest don't like what the people vote for, they frankly try to take away our power. So let's get into Amendment 4, which is the latest attack, and it'll be on our ballots August 4th. For the last 118 years, citizen-led initiatives have passed by earning a simple statewide majority of yes votes. Under Amendment 4, amendments proposed by citizens would need to get a majority vote in all 8 of Missouri's congressional districts. There is no other state that requires such a high bar for citizen initiative amendments. This, to me, is the one humongous argument that we have to defeat Amendment 4. Okay. It would make it nearly impossible for citizens to exercise our freedom to petition by setting up a single district veto in which the no votes in one district would count for more than a statewide majority of yes votes. Of course, this means an amendment can fail even if it earns a majority of votes. Okay. All right. So we have a little interesting analogy here that somebody came up with, and we're in the middle of baseball season here, right? So think about it this way. The main rule of baseball, pretty simple, right? Whichever team scores the most runs wins. So here we've got a little, and this was an actual baseball game, by the way, a number of years ago, Major League Baseball game. So here you see Team 1 ends up winning the real game 15-3. But if you look at it on an inning by inning basis, you'll see there, look at the 6th inning. Team 2 actually scored 2 runs and Team 1 only scored 1. Well, voting in our state is normally simple, right? You look at the final tally. But here, under the rules, if baseball were to be like Amendment 4, this all district requirement, under those rules, Team 1 wouldn't win because they didn't score more runs in the 6th inning than Team 2 did. Same game, same score, different outcome. So again, normally voting in our state is very simple. Whichever side earns the most votes wins. But when politicians don't get the outcomes they want, instead of enacting popular policies and representing the will of the majority, they try to change the rules to take away voter power. Now look at the bottom of this slide. This is a real example. 2016, voters in Missouri approved a tax cap that passed, and that measure won by more than 375,000 votes statewide. However, Congressional District 1 anchored in St. Louis and the northern suburbs of St. Louis County, actually defeated it just themselves by about 31,500 votes. If Amendment 4 had been in place then, that single district would have blocked a measure approved by a clear majority of 375,218 more yes than no votes. And this is just one example out from the last 10 years. So let's talk about ballot candy. They've already tried to mislead us on this using one of their three favorite tricks, ballot candy. The original ballot summary, which was written by politicians, made it seem like this vote on Amendment 4 is about foreign money in state elections and petition fraud. Both are already illegal in Missouri. So, thanks to that state Supreme Court ruling earlier this year, which threw out SB 22, citizens still have the ability to use lawsuits to ask the courts to revise ballot summaries to be fair. And in this case, the courts have revised the language we'll see on our ballots. What you see here is the actual ballot summary that will be appearing on your ballot after it was rewritten by the courts. But it still shows politicians' disdain for majority rule and their intent to mislead voters. So amendments placed on the ballot by politicians are not included in this rule change. That's the other big point here, right? I use the phrase rules for thee, but not for me. So again, if the legislature puts an amendment in front of the people, like Amendment 4, all they need is a statewide majority. They don't need a majority in all 8 congressional districts under Amendment 4. So we've seen how difficult and rare it is for a citizen's amendment to qualify for the ballot. Yet politicians want to restrict your pathway to our state's constitution while keeping the road for themselves exactly the same. So politicians are counting on you not showing up to vote against this, and they're counting on you by putting it on the August ballot, when only a much smaller number of people typically vote. All right. So here are some examples, and I'm going to leave this slide up. I don't have a whole lot to say about it, specifically these 5 individual issues of initiative petition, but I hope you'll at least skim through these, because these are some examples over the years, over a pretty long period of time, of successful citizen initiatives that are actually still benefiting Missouri families today. When Jeff City politicians failed to do their jobs, the citizens have stepped in and invested in their communities. Whether you did vote or would have voted for any of these, you can see that Missourians rely on self-reliance. Okay? So again, hopefully at least some of those are familiar to you. I know one of the ones, I didn't realize this Missouri plan way back in 1940 created this merit-based, nonpartisan system for selecting judges, which then was later copied by more than 30 states. I think that's pretty cool. So again, lots of things there, and this is just a snapshot of 5 of them. All right. Well, we'll need all hands on deck to defeat Amendment 4 this summer. So make sure that you, your friends, family members, neighbors all have a plan to vote. A lot of voters do skip primary elections because they're busy with summer plans or just aren't aware that there is something so important up for a vote. Now, once you've made your plan for a vote, I hope you'll join us to knock on doors and raise awareness. And we've got Respect Mo Voters, the QR code there that you can put your phone, your camera phone up to and scan, or just remember to go to respectmovoters.org. This is likely going to be a close vote, and turnout might make all the difference between losing our power to petition and maintaining it for future generations of Missourians. Now, if you are able to help us out by vote canvassing in particular, that would be fantastic. I know we've got a pretty active group in the Columbia area that is working on this. What we're doing with the canvassing is really because we have voter data, not on who people vote for, but when they vote. We're targeting the 20% of voters that actually show up that vote in primaries so that your efforts in the field have maximum impact. It may or may not be a coincidence that Amendment 4 will appear on our ballots this summer ahead of that November election. Out of the 6 proposed amendments that we expect to vote on this year, only one of them was placed there by initiative petition, which will be the Respect Mo Voters Amendment to preserve the petition process. So at this point, I want to shift gears a little bit. And obviously, mission 1 is to defeat Amendment 4 August 4th. After we do that, and we are going to do that, folks, then I want to look ahead toward November. And Respect Missouri Voters been working to shield the initiative petition against future attacks and thereby strengthen the role of Missouri voters going forward. So what would our amendment do that we're looking to get on the ballot in November? Well, we would put an end to politicians' 3 favorite tricks for undermining the will of the people. So first, it would require ballot summaries to be clear, fair, and easy to understand so that Missourians know exactly what we're voting on. 2, it would preserve our century-old freedom to petition by prohibiting any new laws from the legislature that make it more difficult for citizens to gather signatures or pass initiatives at the ballot box. Amendment 4 would not even be possible under the Respect Missouri Voters Amendment unless it was placed on the ballot by the citizens. And then item 3, we're defending majority rule by making it harder for the legislature to change or undo anything passed by initiative petition, unless an 80% bipartisan supermajority in the State House and Senate would vote to then simply return those changes to the voters. In other words, they wouldn't be able to just unilaterally make a change. They would only be able to put it back in front of the voters if 80% of them voted to do so. So a couple of things it doesn't do. Our amendment doesn't limit what initiatives can do. And new initiatives can still change past initiatives. Okay? I want to spend just a minute here talking about our story. I won't belabor this too long, but it is truly a grassroots campaign, and it was launched way back in December of 2024. Then, in the first part of 2025, 25 town halls across the state, starting in Rolla, and we allowed everyday Missourians to give input. We held policy summits in April and July of last year, using feedback from more than 1,000 Missourians who attended our town halls in order to shape this amendment. We polled folks on ballot language and consulted lawyers before our volunteers chose the policy we wanted to collect signatures for. And then we started gathering signatures in September of 2025. So I want to just be super clear about what an achievement this was. So on May 3rd, just 3 months ago, not even 3 months ago, Respect Missouri voters turned in a staggering 367,741 signatures to the Secretary of State. We know firsthand how difficult it is for citizens to place an amendment on the ballot, so we're quite proud of this historic signature achievement. With all volunteers, we collected signatures from all 115 Missouri counties within the first 40 days of gathering signatures. And we have reason to believe that this is the largest volunteer field operation in Missouri state history. Now, we have there in the red box on the slide that nearly 2,000 volunteers collected almost 260,000 signatures. So just to do a little math here, we did hire some paid signature gatherers really kind of toward the end of the gathering to work specifically in some areas that are a little more rural. But again, I guess my point is volunteers gathered almost 260,000 out of 367,000 signatures. And it was just an incredible effort, just a lot of people involved, and it was amazing to be a part of, I can tell you that. So our campaign is cross-partisan. and it's already been endorsed by both Republican and Democratic former elected officials, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, faith organizations, neighborhood organizations, veterans, good government organizations, women's groups, environmental groups, Missouri NAACP, and the Missouri AFL-CIO, along with many others. And this list is growing by the day. We've added a few since we've done this slide, I think. And so I think one of the reasons that this movement exists is stated very clearly in Article 1, Section 1 of the Missouri State Constitution, right in the beginning. And I'll just read it to you. That all political power is vested in and derived from the people. That all government of right originates from the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. So it's because of this that we're mobilizing to defend the will of the people from whom our Constitution states the government actually derives its power. So finally, again, would encourage you, if you haven't already, to connect with us. We're on all these social media, right? We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, etc., Twitter, all these others. And so please like, follow, subscribe to our accounts on your favorite social media. Stay up to date on the latest because it's just so important, as I think we all know, that we, like I said before, the first step, hugely important, is defeating Amendment 4. Because if Amendment 4 passes, our understanding is it becomes law immediately. So that would mean in November, when we attempt to pass our amendment, the Respect Mo Voters Amendment, to strengthen the citizen initiative, we would have to pass in all 8 congressional districts, which I'm not saying it can't be done, but it would be incredibly difficult. Think about it. The opposition, if you require anything to pass in all 8 districts, the opposition could simply target all their money and resources to one district. And if that one district votes 50.1% against you, then you're sunk. It's just a pretty unfathomable process that they're trying to push past everybody. So I'll stop at this point. And again, hopefully, if you have questions, I will certainly try to answer them best I can. So,
thank you, John. So I see that Sue is ready with a question. Can you unmute and ask John?
Actually, I'm going to make an example. I worked on all the soil and water tax ones, and they were very cleverly written because you put the soil was intentionally put with parks. And the reason for that was to put the Farm Bureau and like groups with the environmentalists when there weren't so many environmentalists in the state. But the legislature will often try to circumvent things. Through the years, I don't know about the soil part, but on the environment part, that was supposed to supplement and give extra funds to state parks. Now there is almost no general funds that go into state parks. They depend on the 1/8 of a cent, the half part that they get from 1/8 of a cent sales tax. Right. So we don't pass that when it comes around, and it's every 10 years.
Right.
We'll have no money to run parks. So
Right.
that's when you're talking about circumventing, they come up with different ways to try to do it.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, to your point, I mean, we could go, you all might have some examples that I'm not even aware of, but, think about that ballot language, right? Like I said, they tried to initially make Amendment 4 sound like we're eliminating fraud, these people gathering signatures. Well, it's already illegal. Okay. And they've used that tactic numerous times. to try to make something sound, and then they bury toward the bottom of the summary what it's really about. And frankly, unfortunately, a lot of voters, sometimes it's the first time that they've seen the amendment summary when they step into the booth, which is unfortunate. But that's the reality. So,
David or Carol.
David, you talked a lot about the RMV petition that's going to be on the November ballot.
right.
Does it have a number yet?
Well, I didn't say this. We're pretty confident it's going to be number 6. And so just that's kind of the way the numbering go, and our lawyers have told us that, I think. So, yeah, that's our confidence in that. I'm going to take a minute to, I guess I'll say, dispute some of the arguments that the vote yes on Amendment 4 people are saying, right? And I'm going to guess some of you have heard these. One of their arguments is that rural Missouri gets outvoted by the urban areas of Missouri. And of course, they point to Kansas City, St. Louis, and they even sometimes throw Columbia in there, and maybe Springfield. Okay. Well, I think we all realize, right, that congressional districts should have about the same number of voters in them. That's the way it's supposed to work, right? And so it's I'll call it fear mongering to say that citizen initiative only benefits urban people. And it's, the urban folks that are shoving this down our throat with their outside influences and whatever. That's the big argument, that rural Missourians are being left out. Okay. And again, we've operated this country with one person, one vote for, I think, about as long as it's existed. And so Amendment 4 to allow one district to cancel out the other 7, I just can't think of anything more ludicrous, to be quite honest. But, they're seeing if they can sneak it by folks, to be quite honest. So anyway. But yeah, we think it's going to be Amendment 6, but you didn't hear that from me because we're not supposed to say that.
Is there another question from Herb or Sue?
We have somebody else with their hand up.
Bam.
Okay,
Pam.
Pam.
I just wanted to make a statement. The signs for no on 4 and 5 are out at the Democratic office, but you can go to the realtor's office and pick up one of those signs, and they're not charging.
Great. Good to know.
Very good to hear that about the realtors.
Why the realtors? What's the logic there?
I think they're more against the sales tax, but
Okay.
Right. Well, the real estate community has in the past actually used citizen initiative in a positive manner for their particular industry.
Yeah.
I think there was a movement a number of years ago to actually add a tax on real estate transactions, and they used the citizen initiative to keep that from happening, as I recall.
The realtors spent $2 million to defeat 4 and $2 million on 5. They are the leading statewide group. I've been working with them for 3 days this week, putting out signs with them. And we will have their signs at our office by tomorrow morning, because we've run out of the ones that we printed and charged people $5. And we will have them at our office. They're free signs. They're our friends right now. They've done a really good job on this. All those TV commercials, Missourians for Fair Taxation, are theirs. They're paying for those.
Right. Yep.
Did that get everyone's question? I guess I have a general one to press you on. Can you say more about why you think this vote in August is going to be close? And I guess the other thing is, do you expect more trouble to get the amendment on the initiative amendment on the ballot in November? Secretary of State and other problems like that.
Sure. Well, I mean, let's put it this way. I think
Trying to get
I think we've got a really good story to tell to vote no on Amendment 4. Having said that, there is significant lobbying. A lot of it, I think you're all probably familiar with AFP, Americans for Prosperity, the lobbying group that originated with the Koch brothers. They're literally going around Missouri a lot of times with paid canvassers, encouraging yes votes on both 4 and 5. They're even in certain parts of the states hosting dinners. They'll say RSVP for this dinner and we'll feed you and we'll tell you about 4 and 5. And AFP is a humongous organization with tremendously deep pockets. And they're kind of targeting a lot of times the more rural areas and giving this message that Amendment 4, will make your voice heard. That's, I think, the message that they're portraying. So, and primary elections with the low turnout is a little bit more of a wild card, to be honest, right? Because so few people vote. Typically it's about 20% of voters in the state historically. So it would be so it would so badly hamstring the citizen initiative process that we absolutely are taking no chances. We are canvassing people, going door to door. Again, August elections, people are ignorant of them, to be quite honest. And people that would be in our corner, awareness is kind of our big thing. So yeah, we're definitely not taken for granted. Again, I think we've got a great story to tell to defeat Amendment 4. We just have to make sure everybody hears it. And we're trying to do that. And we encourage all of you, if you've got friends, neighbors, make sure that they're aware of how important this is. In regard to our amendment in November, respect Missouri voters, before any signatures were turned into the Secretary of State, we did very thorough vetting to make sure we weren't turning in a bunch of signatures that weren't valid. So we're extremely confident that we've met that threshold. Now, the Secretary of State will most likely do everything in their power to at least, they like to delay, okay? My understanding is they have to say yes or no, we got enough signatures by August 4th, the day of the primary. And so that will then give us basically 3 months to convince everybody around the state, to vote yes on our amendment. So, you might have followed the whole situation regarding the gerrymandering and how he's waiting to the last possible minute to validate the people, not politicians, signatures for the anti-gerrymandering. So, and that whole, I've only half kept up with that, but that whole thing is quite the mess. But, again, we feel good about our movement getting on the ballot in November. But like I said, if Amendment 4 passes, it makes our job of passing that in November incredibly difficult. So defeating Amendment 4 is the huge priority right now. And then after we do that, we'll have 3 months to convince everybody to vote yes on what will most likely be Amendment 6. So.
Was exactly what I wanted to get clarified, and I wasn't aware of that organization that was working hard with the rural districts. So thank you for that information. I want to make sure that Ruth got her question answered. She put something in the chat and then had her hand up. Did he take care of answering your question, Ruth?
He did. Thank you.
He did. I thought so. That was what happens if Amendment 4 passes. Not clear what it means for the initiative, but it's going to mess it up really bad, probably fatally, is the general answer there. Well, then, Alice, what can you ask for now?
Actually, it was just a statement. Brianna came to the last Central District meeting last week, And she said it's unlikely, but there's a possibility we would have to have a second primary in September because of this whole mess with when he finally puts them out. I don't exactly understand why, but it's a possibility because of the illegal way the Secretary of State's handled that initiative petition on gerrymandering. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
we won't hold John responsible for getting that all figured out, but what would you have to say, John?
no, I was just going to say, I think it's all an effort to just sow doubt on the process.
Yeah.
And then if you sow enough doubt, some people will say, I'm not even going to go vote because I don't think my vote's really going to count. And I think that's a somewhat unspoken objective behind what's been going on in Jefferson City, to be quite honest. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the whole redistricting situation, I think it's going to get bogged down in the courts. And so, yeah, I mean, what happens? Could there be another primary? I think it's entirely possible. But it's a bunch of dominoes that fall in a certain way, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. But again, it's, I think, indirectly a goal of the folks in charge right now is to discourage people from voting, quite frankly, because the fewer people vote, I think they think the better their chances are. So,
yes, the discouragement that citizen initiative can even work, or that it's always just full of a whole bunch of troubles. I mean, I can see how that would make people
right.
made people turn away from the whole thing, and hopefully they'll say no this time, at least. Say yes to yours, but making the point that it really has worked in the past, apparently for the majority of Missourians, to get things the way they want, and even to impress other states with what we've accomplished that way, and also as a check on a legislature that's going off into national and other movements that the majority of Missourians may not want. I think it has worked. I was always, coming from Indiana, I was always very suspicious that it could work. My first encounter was in California, Prop 13 and then Prop 6. They were bad initiatives that one passed and the second didn't. But in Missouri, there has been a pretty good history to rely on. I hope people can take heart, and maybe your effort can settle this to some great degree, so that all this confusion cannot be sown the next time. That's what I'm really hearing here today about November initiative, and I hope that we can get there. Go ahead.
One other thing, real quick, I just wanted to point out. I don't know how clear it was from our slide deck. One of the other arguments that the pro Amendment 4 people say is that we shouldn't be amending our Constitution all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, legislature-led amendments are more than 80% of the amendments to the Missouri Constitution that have passed. So the citizen initiative, while it might seem like the last few years there have been a few more of them, look at this election August 4th. There's 4 amendments on the ballot. The one about the soil is something that, as was stated, it has to be on the ballot every 10 years, as I understand it. The other 3 were brought to you by the legislature. Okay. So the argument that citizen initiative is changing our Constitution, our sacred Missouri Constitution, too frequently versus the legislature, the facts just don't support it. So
the other thing I could add to that, and then I'll shut up, is that sometimes they want to use that initiative to take the responsibility off themselves. So like for taxes and other things. In other words, the legislature can use and abuse it as they see fit, but the citizens will, if they'll have their way, have no hardly any recourse ever.
Right.
That's pretty clear. We have another from Herb and Sue, and then Al or Mary Jo.
I just have a, did you unmute us? Okay, I just had a real quick thing. I am not in the know as much as I usually am because I'm isolated at Lenore. But I do try to talk politics a little bit there, even though it's discouraged. But what I did want to say is I don't understand the logic. I think it's probably pretty clever, but why is 4 and 5 advertised on billboards together? What's the logic behind that?
The vote no, or
Yeah. Yes, the vote no, the billboards on for your position.
right. Well, I want to be clear that technically, Respect Missouri voters, all we're concerned about is the citizen initiative.
Right.
So Respect Missouri voters is saying, like, the signs that we produced just say no on 4. Okay. We can't officially have a position. That sounds a little ridiculous, but we can't officially have a position on 5.
Right.
I think the reason you see a lot of signs that are saying no on 4 and 5 is simply because of how dramatically they would affect their separate issues. And so, if you are vehemently opposed to both, in a way, why not send that message to both at the same time? I guess is the logic there. So,
well, what I'm hearing, Herb keeps knocking me, but what I'm hearing among workers at Lenore that don't pay many of them don't pay a whole lot of attention or don't think their vote counts or makes a difference if they don't, whatever.
Right.
Is they don't understand when many voters see getting rid of certain taxes saves them money. They think they have no idea the implications otherwise. And I'm trying to educate where I can.
Yeah.
And Herb had something.
I think somebody else is ahead of me.
Yes, Al or Mary Jo.
Yeah, I'll go. There is valid criticism about amending the Constitution too much, but if the proposed Amendment 6 passes, you don't have to do that anymore. And the reason that a lot of the stuff goes into the Constitution is because you pass it as a bill and the legislature overturns it, and they've done that many, many times. So that'll be more of an issue for November, but that's a strong reason to vote for protecting Missouri voters.
Right. Right.
Was there another Herb?
Yes, indeed. This is an offer to let you modify, if you wish, or reassert an intended position. But your early comments stressed over and over was the problem faced by your organization, and I understand I'm with you. I am not descended from Robert La Follette. He was not my living relative when I was born, but I'm with you all the way. And I would like to know why you kept stressing it's politicians, not wasteful politicians, not immoral politicians, not the subset. You included Jack Danforth and so forth, and others who have been important to your position.
Right. Well, I think
accidental or intentional.
Well, I mean, we're trying to create support no matter what a person's political persuasion is, right? And so Jack Danforth, he came out in support of our movement, quite some time ago, actually. It might have been 9 months ago or whatever. Just kind of like John Ashcroft back in the 90s, right? When the Democrats happened to lead the state legislature and that Hancock Amendment passed. So, we're trying to have kind of as wide an appeal as we can. So we like to use a little bit more generic language when we just say, we're not going to say mean-spirited politician. We're trying to keep the message because we're trying to appeal to as many people as we can. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
It implies you're trying to get mega votes.
Well, we'll get votes wherever.
And you should. You should.
Yeah, we're trying to get votes wherever we can.
Absolutely. I agree. Okay. That answers my question perfectly.
Good.
Well, I think if we don't have, let's see, let me check one more time in the chat, but if we don't have any, well, Dave Taylor says, may we share the link to the slideshow with others who need to learn about Amendment 4 and why they should vote against it. Dave Taylor can do that if you can give him the slideshow, I suppose.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah, I don't need
Okay.
the slideshow. I already have the link, and
Okay.
can I share that link so anybody can see it?
Sure.
Okay. So
Okay.
he will put your video announcement in a newsletter, weekly newsletter to all our members. It will show this program, and that
Yeah.
slideshow will also be linkable there. And I think that winds it up from what's been on the floor and in the chat. So give us some final thoughts, what we can do. Again, remind us how important is this? Little wrap up.
Sure. So yeah, and again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today. It's such an important issue. Like we've said a few times, Amendment 4 is, I don't know what word to use, flagrant maybe, flagrant attempt to effectively, quite honestly, eliminate the citizen initiative in Missouri.
Right.
Because it to pass all 8 congressional districts is such a monumental challenge. I don't even know. Missouri is a state, right, with some, not everybody's the same. Okay. We have rural and urban. We have conservative and liberal and everywhere in between. So to get a majority in all 8 districts is, like I said in the presentation, no other state that has a citizen initiative has that high of a bar to pass. There are states, you might be wondering, there are states that have a citizen initiative that require that citizen initiative pass with higher than 50.1%. There are a few states that have like, say, 55, a few even like 60. But that's not what Amendment 4 says. Amendment 4 is much more draconian than that. So, I had a slide there. Hopefully you're all aware. I believe early voting in Missouri starts next Tuesday, the 21st. And so, August 4th, people are on vacation, whatever. I would just urge you in these next few days to make whatever contacts that you haven't made yet and make sure people are aware of the importance of this. Even if they just get in the poll and put a no in the box for Amendment 4 and don't mark anything else, that works. That works for me. But it's just dramatically important that we preserve this. And then, like I said, this is step 1. Step 2 would be to pass our amendment coming in November. And that way, no matter what party is in power, if they're not responding properly to what the people's will is, then we need to hold them responsible. And the citizen initiative is a clear way to do that. So yeah, that's kind of my final thought.
Excuse me, I'm add a clarification to what I think John just said. He said voting starts next Tuesday, early voting.
Early voting, yes.
But that's no excuse, early voting. If a person's
Correct.
going to be on vacation, they can vote right now.
Good point.
That's an excused absence. So anyone who wants to vote and has an excuse, you can vote now. They don't have to wait till Tuesday. Tuesday is no excuse voting. Anybody can come in and vote Tuesday on.
Correct.
So,
Thank you. Yeah, good clarification. Thanks. Oh, David, you're muted, just so you know.
We will have announcements, and then we'll have our executive meeting afterwards to plan the future.